If your company is like mine, you use a ton of online services for various things, whether it's Google Drive or email or even ERP and CRM systems, finance, all those things. All of that software as a service has incredibly valuable corporate data in it, and all of that data needs to be protected, because what would happen if you lost it? I'm Stephen Foskett with Gestalt IT, and I am here talking with my old friend, W Curtis Preston, about data protection. And well, what's your reaction when you think of this SaaS world?
Honestly, it's the one of two things that keeps me awake at night. One being ransomware, and the other being this sort of sense of impending doom that there are, like you said, so many companies that are creating data that's valuable to so many other companies, and none of that data is being backed up in any way that I would recognize as a backup. And I just worry that, well, it's already happening. Companies are losing data, but I just see that ballooning.
Yeah, it seems to me like most people using these systems, and I'm guilty of this as well, most people using these systems assume that the service provider is doing data protection.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think a lot of the service providers would reassure us of that. They would say, yeah, I've got this, your data is protected, we'll recover it. I don't know that they would actually go out of their way to say that, but I think that they want us to feel that way, that they've got our back.
Yeah, I go back and forth on this, right? It depends on who you talk to and how you've got to ask the right questions. I would say the first thing to do is look at your contract, right? Look at your service agreement. Does it say the word backup and recovery in it or anything that sounds like that? 99% of the time the answer is no. And by the way, pick any of the big ones, right? 365, Salesforce, G Suite, any of these big guys. It's not in their contract. And even if they have features that look like backup, it's not actually backup. It's like what I would call like a convenience copy. It's like think of like a snapshot that's only in that storage system. It's not data that's stored in some other place, which means it's not a backup.
Yeah. And I think that's, well, nobody knows more about data protection than this guy, Mr. Backup. I think that's true. In order to be a backup, it has to be protected. And I think most of these systems are relying on basically in-application rollback.
Right.
So if you have Google Drive, you can look at the history of this document, and that's your backup. If you have QuickBooks, you can roll back through the ledger, and that's your backup. But that's not a backup.
No, it's not. It's a really nice convenience copy, right? And it will probably recover you from many of the things that you do that cause damage, and many of the reasons why we used to use backup. But today, I would say the number one reason people are reaching for their backup is ransomware. Mm-hmm. And if a ransomware attack gets in and then just deletes your account or just obliterates it in such a way that you just can't understand it, whatever they have, so either one of two things is happening. Either they may have, let's say, what would you call that? Like a
rollback or something?
Well, I'm trying to think of the recycle bin. They have like a recycle bin that you might be able to get some of the stuff back then, but it's often going to come back in a completely garbled mess, that it's not going to be in the way that you put it in the recycle bin. Or there are ways to delete and defeat the recycle bin features of many products, such as Microsoft 365, and the attackers know how to do those things, and they're specifically going in and disabling, for example, setting your number of versions to 1 and then encrypting everything, right? And then you say, oh, I'll just roll back. Well, they already set your versions to 1. So yeah, the data's got to be stored somewhere else.
And the other thing is as well that in order to be usable, that data has to be in sort of a usable format.
Right.
So I think some of these things will let you extract an export of some sort, but what good is that export? I mean, will you be able to use it?
Yeah, and that is a giant it depends, right? A perfect example would be Salesforce. Salesforce does allow you to, on a regular basis, download all of your objects that they call in Salesforce. And it means that you're going to have like 75 CSV files with 1 million records in them.
Yeah.
And then, yes, you could put everything back, but it will be a giant pain in the butt. But at least if you're doing that, you have something. I'm slightly happy. The thing that I'm worried about is the people that don't do anything. And then they say, oh, well, Microsoft will take care of me. Or I'm using something like Microsoft retention policies. Retention policies are helpful. They're actually an e-discovery tool, not a backup and recovery tool. So if you, let's say, you set up a retention policy that says that your all emails get kept for 9 months, it means they won't be deleted. They'll be stored in that retention policy. But again, getting them back, you will get them back in a mess. It's an e-discovery tool, not a backup and recovery tool, right? And also, retention policies can just as well actually mess up your data, like the famous KPMG story, where instead of deleting one user's data, they deleted all private chats in the entire company using retention policies. It was an accident, but it was an accident with no recovery because they didn't have a backup.
Now, another thing that I feel is indispensable in a useful backup product is some kind of catalog or index or search feature. And a lot of these things don't have that either, right?
No. Again, what they do often have is an e-discovery type search, which is helpful for finding all of the emails with the word Steven in them. But I don't want those emails, right? I want Steven's email box, right? And I want it to look the way it looked yesterday because I need him to continue doing his job, right? That's what they don't have tools to do that. And even if they do, again, I just keep going back to it's just one copy. They have all of these fancy features that feel like backup, but it's just really important to understand that they're not, because what they are is they're storing all of these other versions and things in the same exact database that's doing the main job, right? So you can't store everything all in one place and call that backup. So
at the risk of, I don't want to cut too close to the bone, you sound a little like a grumpy old man yelling at the cloud here.
I do.
Okay.
But somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. So what's the solution then? How can people not be in the result of your ire about the cloud?
Well, first off, for products that have backup tools available, all of the names that we brought up, those all have backup tools that are available. And I'd say probably the top 30 or so of not all SaaS products create data that become mission critical that need to be backed up, right? There's a lot of it that they're transient, they do stuff, right? But the top 30 tools, I'd say there are products that you can use to back them up. Look into those products, ask yourself, why would this one part of IT be different than the rest of IT? And just back that data up. And then for everything else, and that's really what, when you ask me what I wanted to talk about, this is my worry, is all these other applications. What I'd like you to do is put pressure on these companies to say, I need a way to back up my data. And I would be happy, for example, it doesn't have to be a third-party backup, but like if I can push a button and my, stuff that's in your SaaS app gets put into an S3 bucket that I control, that makes me feel better, right? So these companies that want to prioritize their customers' data protection, they could be able to do that. So really that's all you had the power to do, is as a customer say, listen, I need you to do this for me as a vendor.
And I guess the other aspect of this too is that many companies use a lot of SaaS, but they may use a lot of on-prem stuff too, or a lot of not as a service cloud-based applications. Right. Is there a solution to that basically allows a company to have a uniform approach to data protection from the data center to the cloud to SaaS?
There are a few, but you really just have to pick an approach. You either have to pick an on-prem approach, and there are a handful of companies that do that, and then you back up cloud things to a data center, or you pick a cloud approach and you back up the data center things to the cloud. It's easy to back up cloud things to the cloud, right? It's easy to back up data center things to a data center. So you have to pick one of those approaches, or it's probably easier to pick a cloud-centric backup product for the cloud and a data center backup product for the data center. That personally, rubs me the wrong way. I want a centralized way to do it, and there are some companies that can do that, but it's not a end-all, be-all. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yep. So I guess the take-home message for people that are listening, what should they be thinking about when it comes to SaaS backup, and what should they be doing in order to basically continue this conversation and learn more from you?
Yeah, so I would say just think about the SaaS services that your company is using and ask yourself, if all of that data went away one day, how would that impact my company? How much money would I be out? And then use that number to justify some sort of backup and recovery system, and start Googling, how do I back up Salesforce? Right? How do I back up ABC? Whatever it is. And if there's a vendor that does it, hopefully they've got some content, and you'll have, an SEA will be your friend, and you'll find a way. In terms of me, I definitely, if you agree with me and you need some help backing you up, my podcast, which is the Backup Wrap Up, which is at backupwrapup.com, you can listen to that, and of course my blog on Backup Central.
Thanks a lot. And if you're interested in more of these conversations, this is a Gestalt IT Tech Talk. So go to gestaltit.com or our YouTube channel, which is Gestalt IT Video, and you'll find more tech talks like this. And of course, you can find me on our weekly podcasts, the On-Premise IT podcast, Utilizing Tech, as well as our weekly tech news show, the Gestalt IT Rundown. Thanks for listening, and I hope that you got some interesting advice here from Mr. Backup.